What's up guys, I'm randomfrankp. Today we're going to be reviewing Madden 17. I've been playing Madden since 2001 and I'll be taking my experience again this year and telling you guys what I think about this year's release. There's a lot to go over here, so sit back and take it all in. Having torn the game apart in my review last year, let's find out if Madden 17 can finally cross the goal line and be more than just that roster update. First off, the opening sequence is no other than Gronk plowing his way through the Jets' defense. As the cover athlete, you can expect this brute to stiff arm those defenders every time you turn your game on. Following that loading screen, you are met with the returning scenario Madden throws you into before the game. This year we have the LA Rams and the Washington Redskins in an NFC wildcard matchup. You take control of Jared Goff and the Rams offense after a CGI cutscene of Coach Fisher icing the kicker, then encouraging his defense to block the field goal, in which obviously happens to put you in control of your own destiny. More on these block kicks later on, as this is one thing Madden is looking to push this year. After a few scripted plays and cutscenes later, you win the game and complete the dramatic opener. These are always really well done, they look nice, but they don't accurately represent the gameplay unfortunately, but that's a debate for another day. Now, let's talk about the important stuff: the presentation, gameplay, and the game modes. Within your first few seconds of the game, you'll notice immediately that EA spent some time revamping the game's menus and interface. We still have the unfavorable Windows-like tiles, but it is at least easy to navigate. However, none of that really matters because the biggest presentation update comes within the gameplay. This is probably the biggest improvement and I could not be happier. EA finally ditched those clowns and Jim Nantz and Phil Simms, and now we have Brandon Gowden and Charles Davis, a duo who has more fluent conversation and chemistry than the previous duo ever did. Now, commentary is natural, they're not putting on an act, it's 100 times better, and is probably the best commentary since we had John Madden himself in the booth. One thing that makes this awesome is their quote live commentary. They actually record dialogue based off what's happening in the real world. Yes, there will be updates to the commentary that makes the events they're talking about relevant. I was playing the other day and they were talking about how the Ravens actually paused their preseason game to show the Michael Phelps swim in the Olympics, which just happened literally 5 days ago. They also talked about how well Trevon Boykin and Dak Prescott did in their first preseason game. Never before have we had a commentary system like this, and hearing actual relevant info and news in the game is really cool. I assume the commentary updates are going to come weekly all season long, so we have to applaud EA for that dedication. Now yes, there's still going to be some moments where lines are repeated or there's going to be some awkward silence during a drive, but again that's to be expected and it is still better than ever before. Also finally coming to the game is the long awaited addition of a score ticker on the bottom of the screen. This is something that should have been included years and years ago, but at least now we finally have it. During your franchise or season, you'll see updates from games and scores around the league, and updates when a team is in the red zone. This makes it feel much more realistic to any given Sunday when we see those real-time simulated scores on the bottom. It's cool to keep tabs on other teams, especially if you're in a tight race in the division. Now let's talk about gameplay. Each year, the game plays more fluently with more realistic motion and animations, and we do get a slight upgrade yet again. In terms of graphics though, nothing really too noteworthy here. Some players look very true to life and others are just that stock player model. However, the lighting is greatly improved to give the field, players, and the stadium a more realistic look during your games. Something about the glistening sparkle on helmets as it reflects the stadium is a nice sight to see. When you're on the field, EA for some reason has the gameplay preset speed set to slow, which is way too slow and boring. I suggest going in immediately and making the game speed either normal or fast, because even the normal setting I think feels sluggish. One thing I also noticed immediately is that EA has really worked on their defensive mechanics. Now we get a better functioning player alignment on defense to make sure players are actually in the right place. If the offense flips its formation, defense will acknowledge that and still mark their man. Speaking of which, the assignments are also improved. Gap responsibilities finally make sense to have a proper lineup on the field. Players will line up where they should be on any given play or formation, which believe it or not was something that was lacking in previous games. Just having those gap responsibilities so a player can break up a run if you recognize the offensive scheme definitely gives you a nice edge. While I could talk about all the different mechanics on defense, I won't waste your time because there's a lot more things to mention. Last year, due to the rise of Odell Beckham Jr., we had receivers making all sorts of crazy one-handed receptions and flashy highlight catches that would never happen in real life. I'm happy to report this year that is much less likely now. Now players with only those highlight abilities and a high catch rating will be the one making those SportsCenter top 10 catches. However, to contrast that, on the All-Pro setting, which I usually play at, drops were way too frequent. I thought at first it was because I was playing as the Eagles, but when I was using the Cardinals, we couldn't catch a cold. Hell, Larry Fitzgerald, who probably has the most reliable hands in the game, had more drops on easy routes with minimal contact than actual receptions. If you want to fine-tune your game and make it more realistic, you'll have to spend some time in the sliders menu. And the last thing to bring up before we move on is the focus on blocked punts and field goals. In the past, you would be lucky to witness a block kicked once the entire year that you're playing. Now that all changes. It really just comes down to timing in the game scenario. I've had 2 blocks on me so far. Once when I was kicking a go-ahead field goal, and the other was when I was going to punt, and they both happened in the same game versus the Seahawks when it was all tied up. I did wind up losing that game, unfortunately, and it was kind of strange that the blocks were only happening when the game was within a single possession. I haven't had luck blocking anything on my own yet, but I do hope that it's not overdoing it down the line. I mean, twice in one game is ridiculous to lose me that game. This brings me to the last point before I wrap up the pros and cons: the game modes. My all-time favorite mode has always been franchise mode. You take control of a player or a coach, set some season goals, earn experience and points to improve you and your team. And playing through the regular season and fighting for the playoffs has always just been fun to me. And that all changes this year for the better. One thing they added to make the gameplay go faster is the play the moment simulation. If you don't have the full hour to sit down and complete the game, you can now just play only certain moments. You can choose to play either those big important plays or drives, pick to play offense only or defense only. It's cool to have that option now if you're pressed for time. You can get through a single game in about 20 minutes or so, making this season a breeze. In between weeks, you can also train your players and game plan against your opponent. You can pick a certain play or defensive coverage and practice, earn more experience, and progress. Throughout my first season as the Eagles, I had Carson Wentz training each week to focus on his improvements, and by the 2017 season, he was at an 82 rating while Bradford was at an 81. We also have the return of Draft Champions, which is probably one of the more interesting and fun modes. We saw them create this and iterate it last year in Madden 16, and it is still fun as hell. It's pretty much a fantasy draft by picking one player per round out of 3. As each round ends, your chances of building your dream team starts to be a giant game of chance, and that's why it's fun. If you pick a highly rated running back instead of that star receiver early, you might get an even better running back down the line and not have the chance to get a receiver, making your earlier selection a waste. Do you draft that 96 rated safety or settle on a quarterback that might not appear again in the remaining rounds? It's pretty much Russian roulette with your roster. In my first draft, I stacked up heavy and had a legendary defense, but a pretty lackluster offense. Then in my second time around, my defense was mediocre, but I had a crazy stacked offense and got lucky with a 2013 Nick Foles card in the last round when I thought I would be settling with Matt Castle as my quarterback. And then there's Ultimate Team, and I've never really been a fan of Madden's Ultimate Team. There's really no improvement to speak of again this year. It's the same as years past. I don't really need to explain what Ultimate Team is. So there it is. That's Madden 17. This is no doubt by far the best Madden game to date, and it's the first Madden title in a long time that sucked me in and had me playing for hours on end. I haven't done that probably since like Madden 2005. Franchise mode is improved and fun again, gameplay is fluent, natural, mechanics are improved, new commentary with the score ticker is awesome, and so on. However, if I had to mention some cons, I easily can. Some players still look nothing like their real-life counterpart. I wish drops were less frequent with sure-handed receivers. The new kicking mechanism is meh, and I don't want to see my kicks blocked to an unrealistic amount. I wish the jerseys would get tugged and ripped like in real life. And the gameplay settings out of the box are unbearable. Definitely spend time in the gameplay sliders to tune your game and make it more realistic. But perhaps the biggest con and what pissed me off the most is the receivers do not know how to block their man. Whether it's on a screen pass or I'm running down the field on the sideline with my running back, the receivers will not block. They'll just either keep running or look clueless. I really hope this gets fixed. This is just the first Madden game that really nailed it, and it is way more than just a roster update. In my tech reviews, I don't usually give scores, but since it's a game, I think this deserves a solid 8 out of 10. I hope you're an Amazon Prime member because you can get this game for as low as $46 now with free 2-day shipping. And if you're not, I'll put a 1-month trial link in the description down below. Well, that'll do it, guys, for my review of Madden 17. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a big thumbs up to show your support. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at randomfrankp. Lastly, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Well, I'm Random Frank P. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.